Bhumibol Adulyadej. If you live in the Western world, there's a good chance you've never heard that name before. But what if I told you that he was one of the greatest leaders of the 20th and 21st centuries? What if I told you that despite being one of the wealthiest individuals in the world, he spent a majority of his life trying to help improve the lives of the poor in his country? Bhumibol Adulyadej was king of Thailand for 70 years. When he died in October of 2016, the entire country of 69 million people spent a month in mourning. No sports, no theaters or other forms of public entertainment. Shopping malls took down their more colorful displays, and many citizens wore black and white as a sign of mourning for several weeks. To this day, many still weep at the thought of his passing. But why? Who was this king? And why were the Thai people so endeared to him? Well, there were many reasons the Thai citizens loved their king. I'm going to focus on two main reasons why Bhumibol was a great leader. One, his efforts to fight opium production in Thailand, and two, his work to improve water resource management among impoverished farming communities. In the early 1970s, Thailand became the world's leading producer of opium. Bangkok, the capital city, became synonymous with drugs such as heroin and amphetamines, as illustrated by the song A Passage to Bangkok from Canadian band Rush's album 2112. So, opioid farming in Thailand was a major problem starting in the 1950s. Let's look at a map of Thailand real quick. Here's Bangkok, the largest city where most of the political and military power is kept. These are the highlands, far away from Bangkok. They are separated by a mountainous region, which isolates the highland area from the rest of the country. This is where the majority of opium was being grown. Farmers here have historically been poor due to how undeveloped the region is. Beginning in 1960, the military began a process of forced eradication. They would essentially march into a community, locate the opium fields, and burn them to the ground. Not only did this push highland farmers towards supporting communist insurgents who wanted to overthrow the government, it took impoverished communities and made them even poorer. And the opium farming continued once the military left. In 1969, King Bhumibol had a revolutionary idea. Instead of punishing poor opium farmers, the government needed to help develop the area and help the farmers grow new food crops so that they could be more self-sufficient and not rely on opium money. Several new programs administered by the Thai government and the UN were created. New roads into the mountains were built, helping to connect the isolated region to the rest of the nation. Farmers were given financial aid to help them transition their fields to food and cash crops. In fact, up through the 1980s, the government chose not to enforce opium laws against farmers until they had access to alternative livelihoods. The result? Well, let me quote James Wendell in his paper, Security Trumps Drug Control, How Securitization Explains Drug Policy Paradoxes in Thailand and Vietnam. In 1999, the U.S. Department of State removed Thailand from its major drug producers list, and the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime declared Thailand poppy-free in 2002. Between the peak of production in 1970 and 2010, production declined by 98%. Overall, the intervention had a positive impact on opium farming communities in terms of economic development and access to social goods. Not only that, but those farmers who were supporting the communists changed and began supporting the national government and King Bhumibol. Some historians point to this as a major reason the communist movement was stopped in Thailand, and why it didn't end up like its neighbor, Vietnam. King Bhumibol the Great became regarded as the royal father of Thai water resources. He spent much of his life working to improve water resource management throughout Thailand. Thailand is prone to a curious water problem. As Bhumibol himself put it, when there is water, there is too much. It floods the area. When the water recedes, it is drought. Having lived and been educated in Switzerland, Bhumibol remembered learning as a child, quote, "There must be forest on the mountain, or the rain will erode the soil and damage the mountain surface," end quote. With this basic understanding of forest and soil conservation, young Bhumibol's interest in irrigation and water would grow for many years, until he would eventually study the science at college in Switzerland. In 1953, King Bhumibol visited the Isan hinterland, the first time a king of the Chakri dynasty visited the remote area. He met with many villagers who sought his help in solving their intense drought problems. The visit left a deep impression on Bhumibol, and probably motivated him in his later rural development campaigns. In the late 1960s, to coincide with his opium replacement programs, the king started royally initiated projects, funded by the monarchy, which tried to develop new water management systems and infrastructure. Dams were constructed, floodplains were reprofiled, and reservoirs were designed and maintained to help supply water to drought-stricken areas. These projects also focused on providing welfare and disaster relief for flood-affected communities. Disaster plans, particularly for Bangkok and the surrounding area, were conceived and carried out under the leadership of the king. One of the more intriguing projects Bhumibol undertook involved Chitralada Villa, the summer palace of the king. In the 1980s, the palace grounds were converted into an experimental farm, forest conservatory, and fishery. New techniques for farming and irrigation were tested and developed, as well as soil and forest conservation methods. Once methods had been shown to be effective, a team of scientists would travel to rural villages to teach locals more efficient ways to farm. What's more, the king, who was reportedly the inspiration behind many of these projects, would travel with the team to meet villagers and show them the new methods himself. Imagine that for a second. You live in a small farming village in the middle of nowhere, and His Highness the King comes to visit to show you how to farm more effectively. Truly, this endeared him to his people more than any other single action. One last project King Bhumibol worked on, and actually succeeded with, was rain seeding, or artificial rainmaking. He funded and helped develop techniques where, by dropping certain chemicals and dry ice onto clouds, he could make it rain. He is credited with several patents for rain seeding, and this technique has not only helped areas suffering from drought during the dry season, it has added to his overall mystique as a nearly godlike figure in the minds of the Thai people. It's hard to argue against them. What kind of man can make rain fall from the sky? In conclusion, King Bhumibol Adulyadej, Bhumibol the Great, Rama IX, was possibly the greatest leader in the history of Thailand. His efforts to improve the lives of the Thai people, especially those living in poverty in the countryside, endeared him to his citizens and created a nearly tangible bond. His death is a great loss. The nation is currently at a crossroads as to where its leadership will take it. But if they follow the wisdom of King Bhumibol, they will probably have a bright future. And that is what makes King Bhumibol Adulyadej the greatest leader you've never heard of.